Welcome to Sleep Through Secrets. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to settle in. To make yourself comfortable, wherever you are. If you're lying in bed, ease your shoulders into the mattress. If you're seated, let your hands rest gently on your lap. Feel the tension in your jaw, your brow, your neck. Loosen. There's a soft background music playing behind my voice. A gentle sound designed to help your thoughts slow. To ease you into rest, you don't need to stay awake through this entire video. The stories will go on, whether your eyes are open or closed, whether you catch every detail, or drift into sleep midway, either way. You're safe here, now. Let's begin tonight's quiet, unsettling journey. Through some of America's most haunting unsolved crimes, some have been whispered about for generations, some buried beneath forgotten headlines and dusty police reports, all remain unresolved, and we start with a story so chilling, so tragic, that it's lingered in Philadelphia's memory for over half a century. The Boy in the Box, Philadelphia, 1957, on February 25, 1957. A college student named Frederick Benosis was walking through the wooded, rural outskirts of Philadelphia's Fox Chase neighborhood. It was cold that day, a sharp winter wind threading through bare tree branches, as he passed by a small stretch of undergrowth. Something caught his eye. A cardboard box, discarded, battered by rain and snow, half sunken into the frozen mud. Inside that box was the lifeless body of a young boy, no older than 4, perhaps 6. His tiny frame was bruised, his hair had been crudely shorn, uneven patches exposing pale scalp. He was naked, wrapped in a thin, tattered flannel blanket. Authorities arrived quickly. The scene was as grim as it was baffling. The box itself had once contained a baby's bassinet, sold by a local department store, but no one could trace who had purchased it. The child's fingerprints were taken. Yet no match was found in any orphanage, hospital, or police record, even after his photograph appeared in newspapers and was mailed to hundreds of institutions. No one came forward. It was as though the boy had never existed. Police were relentless. Posters with the boy's image, a sad-eyed, black and white photo of a young face forever frozen in time, appeared everywhere. Radio programs described his features. Neighborhoods were canvassed. Leads trickled in, but none held weight. A local woman claimed to have seen a suspicious couple near the woods days before. A drifter reportedly mentioned hearing a baby's cries in that area. Both leads vanished like smoke. The theories began. One suggested he'd been the illegitimate child of a wealthy family, discarded to avoid scandal. Another believed he was a runaway from a cruel orphanage nearby. There was even a suspicion that he had been part of an illegal adoption gone wrong. Years later, a woman known only by the pseudonym M claimed her abusive mother had bought the boy, kept him hidden in a basement, and eventually killed him in a fit of rage. Her story, while compelling, lacked corroboration. In the early 2000s, forensic advancements brought renewed hope. DNA samples were extracted from strands of the boy's hair and tooth pulp. The case's custodians believed a match could finally identify America's unknown child, yet as of today, no definitive result has been shared with the public. In 1998, the boy was reburied in Ivy Hill Cemetery, Philadelphia. His grave marker, often adorned with fresh flowers and small stuffed animals, reads simply, "America's unknown child." Imagine that cold, overcast afternoon in 1957, the wind moving through brittle grass, an empty cardboard box half concealed in undergrowth, the eerie silence that follows discovery. Let that image settle in your mind. And as it does, notice your breathing has begun to slow, the steady rise and fall of your chest, the weight of your limbs sinking deeper into where you rest, the gentle music behind these words cradling your thoughts. And now, We move to one of the most infamous disappearances in American history, the vanishing of Jimmy Hoffa, Detroit, 1975. Jimmy Hoffa was more than a labor leader, he was a symbol of mid-20th century America, the president of the Teamsters Union. Hoffa represented millions of working men and women. His influence extended deep into politics, industry, and, as many whispered, organized crime. On July 30, 1975, Hoffa left his lakeside home in Orion Township, Michigan. He was scheduled to meet with two men at the Machu's Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township. One was Anthony "Tony Jack" Giacalone, a Detroit mob enforcer. The other, Anthony "Tony Provenzano, a feared mafia capo from New Jersey. Hoffa told his wife, Josephine, he'd be home by evening, but Jimmy Hoffa never returned. At approximately 2:15 p.m., witnesses observed him standing outside the restaurant's parking lot. He appeared tense, pacing, occasionally checking his watch. Then, as abruptly as he appeared, he was gone. His unlocked car was found later that day, keys still in the ignition. Police launched an immediate search. By nightfall, rumors swirled through Detroit's underworld. By morning, the story had reached national headlines. Theories bloomed like weeds. Some claimed Hoffa was taken to a mafia-run meatpacking plant, where he was swiftly killed and incinerated. Others believed he was buried beneath the concrete slabs of a new stadium under construction in New Jersey. A third theory involved his body being driven to a nearby lake, weighted down, and submerged. Despite numerous FBI investigations, informant testimonies, and deathbed confessions, no credible evidence ever surfaced. The case was formally closed in 1982, with Hoffa declared legally dead, but the mystery persisted. In 2003, the FBI excavated a Michigan farm believed to be his final resting place. Nothing was found. In 2013, a driveway in Roseville, Michigan, was dug up after a tip. Again, no trace. Jimmy Hoffa remains one of the most famous missing persons in American history. Picture a warm July afternoon in suburban Detroit, the quiet hum of traffic along Woodward Avenue, a man in a dark suit, pacing, glancing at his watch, and then absence, the unsettling quiet when someone ceases to be. As that image settles in your mind, allow yourself to feel a little heavier, your thoughts moving slower, your eyelids, perhaps, heavier now. Next, we journey into one of the strangest, most tragic disappearances in modern American lore, the disappearance of Maura Murray, New Hampshire, 2004. Maura Murray was a bright, athletic 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. On February 9, 2004, without warning, Maura emailed her professors, citing a family emergency. She packed her belongings, withdrew cash from an ATM, bought alcohol at a local store, and drove north toward the White Mountains of New Hampshire. At 7:27 p.m., Maura crashed her car on a remote stretch of Route 112 near Haverhill, New Hampshire. A passing bus driver, seeing the accident, stopped and offered help. Maura declined, saying she had already called AAA, though no call records ever confirmed this. When police arrived just after 7:45 p.m., Maura was gone. The car was locked. Her belongings, including the purchased alcohol and a packed suitcase, remained inside. A rag was found stuffed inside the car's tailpipe. Despite extensive searches involving dogs, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers, no trace of Maura was ever found. Not a footprint in the snow, not a torn scrap of clothing, nothing. Theories abound. Some believe she staged her disappearance intentionally. Others suspect foul play, abduction, perhaps, by a passing motorist or someone she planned to meet. A few entertain darker possibilities. A serial predator lurking in those icy woods. As of today, Maura Murray's disappearance remains one of America's most baffling mysteries. And as you imagine that desolate mountain road, The brittle hush of snow. A single car's headlights vanishing around a bend. Notice your breathing again. Slow and steady, the night stretches ahead, and our next case is equally unsettling. We continue now. Deeper into America's forgotten corners, where mysteries persist and answers remain stubbornly out of reach. So far, we've uncovered the tragic enigma of the boy in the box, the notorious disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, and the baffling vanishing of Maura Murray. Now we turn to a case so peculiar, so tragically strange. It's lingered in the annals of unsolved American history for over 4 decades. The Yuba County 5, California, 1978, on the night of February 24, 1978, 5 young men from Yuba City, California, disappeared without a trace. They were friends, each with mild developmental or psychiatric conditions, bonded over sports, particularly basketball. That evening, they attended a college basketball game at California State University, Chico. Afterward, they stopped at a convenience store, buying snacks, drinks, and one fruit pie. Then, somewhere along the winding, dark roads of the Sierra Nevada foothills, they vanished. The 5 were Bill Sterling, 29, Jack Madruga, 30, Ted Weiher, 32, Jack Hewitt, 24, and Gary Mathias, 25. Mathias was a U.S. Army veteran, diagnosed with schizophrenia, but had been successfully managing his condition for years. When none returned home that night, their families grew concerned. The next morning, police began searching. Several days later, the men's car, a Mercury Montego, was found abandoned on a desolate mountain road near Rogers Cow Camp in Plumas National Forest, nearly 70 miles from Chico, and far off their expected route home. There was no sign of struggle. The car had a quarter tank of gas. Inside were candy wrappers and empty drink containers from the convenience store. The car started normally when tested, so why had they left it? Weeks passed. In June, when snow began to melt, searchers made a horrifying discovery, nearly 20 miles from the abandoned car. Deep within the woods, searchers stumbled upon a U.S. Forest Service trailer. Inside, on a bed, lay the emaciated body of Ted Weiher. He was wrapped in 8 sheets, head to toe. His beard indicated he had survived between 8 and 13 weeks after the group's disappearance. Near him, unopened sea rations and matches sat untouched. No fire had been lit in the trailer stove, though heavy clothing and bedding were available. Weiher had suffered severe frostbite and gangrene. Nearby, 3 more bodies were found. Sterling and Madruga were located along the same road leading to the trailer, having likely succumbed to hypothermia. Hewitt's remains were scattered a bit farther into the wilderness. Gary Mathias, however, was never found. His shoes were in the trailer, suggesting he had either perished elsewhere or left barefoot in the snow. To this day, no trace of Mathias has surfaced. Why did the men abandon a perfectly working car? Why trek miles into snowy wilderness without adequate clothing? Why leave food untouched? Never light a fire. Theories remain speculative. Some believe they were chased by unknown assailants. Others suggest a shared psychotic episode, though there's little clinical basis. A few locals claim to have seen the group at a store the night they vanished, but nothing concrete followed. The case has become known as America's Dyatlov Pass incident, referring to a similarly baffling case in Soviet Russia. To this day, the disappearance and deaths of the Yuba County 5 remain an unsolved American tragedy, as you picture that snowbound wilderness. The skeletal outlines of trees. A car alone on a mountain road. Notice your own breath, slow and steady, the gentle lull of music behind my voice, your body, sinking further into rest. Our next case reaches even further back in time. Into the Gilded Age of New England, the Villisca Axe Murders, Iowa, 1912, on the morning of June 10, 1912. The small town of Villisca, Iowa, awoke to a horror they'd never imagined. The Moore family home, situated on a quiet residential street, seemed peaceful, yet inside lay the butchered remains of 8 people: Josiah Moore, a respected businessman, his wife Sarah, and their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, were all brutally murdered with an axe in their beds. Visiting friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, 2 young sisters who had spent the night, met the same fate. The scene was one of unspeakable violence. Each victim's head had been smashed multiple times with the blunt end of an axe. Strangely, the killer, or killers, had covered the victims' faces with bedclothes after death. Mirrors in the house had been draped with cloth. An uneaten plate of food sat on the kitchen table. Investigators believed the murders had occurred sometime after midnight. A kerosene lamp was found at the foot of the bed, its chimney removed to dim the flame. A second axe, bloodied and discarded, was located in the guest room. Despite intense local and national interest, no one was ever convicted. Several suspects were named. Reverend George Kelly, an eccentric traveling preacher with a history of mental illness, confessed. Then recanted. A local man named Frank Jones, rumored to have held a business grudge against Josiah Moore, was suspected but never formally charged. Serial killer Henry Lee Moore, no relation, was briefly considered. Despite these leads, the case dissolved into rumor. The house still stands today as a tourist attraction. Known as one of America's most haunted homes, visitors claim to hear children's voices, doors slamming on their own, and phantom footsteps in empty halls. Picture, for a moment, the stillness of a summer night in 1912 Iowa, wooden houses, the chirp of insects, a soft breeze through lace curtains, and within one home, something unspeakable. Let your breathing grow even deeper now. Feeling the gentle pull of sleep, our final case this evening is a crime so bizarre its details strain belief. The Circleville Letters, Ohio, 1976 to 1994. In 1976, residents of Circleville, Ohio, began receiving anonymous, threatening letters. These notes, written in blocky, crude handwriting, accused people of dark secrets, infidelity, corruption, even murder. The first target was Mary Gillespie, a local school bus driver. The letter accused her of having an affair with the school superintendent, Gordon Massey. The letters escalated, threatening to expose her publicly if she didn't stop. Mary confided in her husband, Ron, and a few close friends. They decided to keep the letters quiet, hoping the matter would fade, but it didn't. Ron received his own letter, warning him to intervene or face consequences. On August 19, 1977, Ron allegedly left home with a firearm, intending to confront the anonymous writer. An hour later, he was dead. His car had crashed into a tree. Authorities found a single bullet fired from his revolver, though it wasn't clear when or why it was discharged, ruling his death an accident. Police found no evidence of foul play. The letters continued. More than 1,000 would be sent over the next decade, targeting judges, law enforcement, and everyday citizens. Many accused recipients of heinous crimes and personal scandals. The letters seemed to have intimate knowledge of their lives. In 1983, a suspect emerged, Paul Freshour, Mary Gillespie's brother-in-law. Freshour was convicted of attempted murder after a booby-trapped sign meant for Mary was found, rigged with a gun. He denied involvement but was sentenced to prison, strangely, while Freshour was behind bars. The letters persisted. They even reached the prison warden and Freshour himself. The postmarks traced back to Columbus, Ohio, where Freshour had no access. He was paroled in 1994. The letters, at last, stopped. Was it one person, a group, a deep conspiracy involving local officials? The Circleville letters remain one of the strangest unsolved harassment cases in U.S. history. Imagine, if you will, a quiet Midwestern town, letter carriers making their rounds, and inside each envelope, accusations, threats, secrets no outsider should know. And as you imagine that unease, your own eyes may be heavier now, your breathing slower. The night, long and gentle, stretches on. We continue now deeper into America's archives of mystery. You've already heard of the tragic case of the boy in the box, the vanishing of Jimmy Hoffa, the unsettling disappearance of Maura Murray, the baffling deaths of the Yuba County Five, the horrific Villisca Axe murders, and the strange Circleville letters. Our next case is one that has lingered for decades. A tale of a family slain in their sleep, an unknown assailant. And no answers to this day. The Hinterkaifeck murders, 1922, though German in origin, this case captivated American audiences for generations and is worth revisiting for its haunting parallels to U.S. crime mysteries. On March 31, 1922. In a small, isolated farmstead located between the Bavarian towns of Ingolstadt and Schrobenhausen, 6 members of the Gruber family were brutally murdered. Andreas Gruber, 63, and his wife Kazilia, 72, were bludgeoned to death in their barn. Their daughter Victoria, 35, her 2 children Kazilia, 7, and Joseph, 2, and the maid, Maria Baumgartner, newly hired that very day, met the same grisly fate inside the house. Each victim had been struck repeatedly with a mattock, a pickaxe-like tool. The killer then covered the bodies with hay and bed sheets. What unnerved investigators wasn't only the brutality, but the eerie circumstances surrounding the murders. In the days leading up to the crime, Andreas reportedly told neighbors about strange footprints in the snow leading from the forest to the farm. But none leading back. Keys vanished, footsteps and voices were heard in the attic. The family dog barked incessantly at unseen figures, but the Grubers chose to stay. After the murders, witnesses claimed to see smoke rising from the farm's chimney, suggesting the killer remained in the house for several days. Livestock was fed, meals were prepared, and even the household was maintained. The killer vanished without a trace. Multiple suspects were questioned over the years, among them, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor and rumored former lover of Victoria, faced particular scrutiny, especially after acting suspiciously during body discoveries. But evidence was circumstantial, and no charges were ever filed. The weapon was later discovered buried in the family's barn. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the most unsettling unsolved mass killings in modern history. Its ominous details, isolated farmhouses, shadowy figures, and families slain in their sleep, have echoed through similar American cases for over a century. Picture, for a moment, a farmhouse on the edge of a snowy wood. Cold winds curling around shuttered windows. A single lantern left burning inside. Let that image settle in your mind as your breathing slows. And now, one of the most bizarre disappearances in the annals of American crime, the Springfield 3, Missouri, 1992, on June 7, 1992, in Springfield, Missouri. 3 women vanished without a trace from a single home. Suzanne Susie Streeter, 19, her mother Cheryl Levitt, 47, and Susie's friend Stacy McCall, 18, disappeared sometime between 2 a.m. and dawn. The night before, Susie and Stacy attended their high school graduation ceremony. After a brief visit to several graduation parties, they planned to stay at another friend's house. At the last minute, they changed their plans, deciding instead to spend the night at Susie and Cheryl's home on 1717 East Delmar Street. At approximately 2 a.m., both girls were seen arriving at the house. By morning, all 3 women were gone. Friends arrived to pick them up for a planned water park trip but found the house empty. Their belongings, purses, keys, and clothing, remained inside. The front door was unlocked, the porch light's globe had been shattered. A disturbing clue came from the answering machine. A strange, garbled message was left sometime in the night, though it was accidentally erased by one of the women's friends before police arrived. No signs of a struggle existed, no blood, no obvious forced entry. Early theories ranged from an abduction by a stalker to someone known to the family. A local convicted kidnapper and murderer, Robert Craig Cox, was long considered a suspect. Cox, who lived in Springfield at the time, gave conflicting statements over the years, at one point claiming he knew what happened to the women, but refused to reveal it until his mother's death. Yet, no concrete evidence tied Cox, or anyone else, to the crime. Decades later, the fate of the Springfield Three remains unknown, as you picture that quiet suburban home in the early hours of dawn. An empty driveway, a half-lit porch, 3 missing women. Notice your breathing is steady now. The music behind these words continues to softly drift. We turn now to a strange and chilling unsolved crime that terrorized California's capital, the East Area Rapist/Golden State Killer, California, 1976 to 1986. Between 1976 and 1986, a masked intruder terrorized communities across California, initially known as the East Area Rapist. This assailant committed at least 50 home invasions, sexual assaults, and 13 murders. His method was precise and sadistic. He would stalk suburban neighborhoods for days, learning residents' routines. He often made phone calls to his victims, taunting them, sometimes weeks before an attack. On the night of an assault, he would enter homes through unlocked windows or sliding doors. Victims were bound with shoelaces, blindfolded, and gagged. In homes with couples, the male partner was often tied up, forced to listen as the assailant attacked the woman. He stole personal items, sometimes leaving strange objects arranged in disturbing patterns. Local law enforcement agencies struggled, hampered by lack of coordination in the pre-digital era. Over time, the East Area Rapist expanded his range across northern and southern California. In 1981, the attacks stopped as abruptly as they'd begun. For decades, the case went cold, but survivors and amateur sleuths kept the story alive. In 2016, crime writer Michelle McNamara's best-selling book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, renewed public interest. Her obsessive research and advocacy prompted new forensic testing, and in 2018, using investigative genetic genealogy, authorities arrested 72-year-old Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer. DeAngelo confessed to many of the crimes and was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2020. Yet, questions remain. How did he avoid capture for so long? Were there unknown accomplices? Could there be additional victims? The Golden State Killer's reign of terror remains one of the darkest chapters in California's criminal history. As you imagine quiet, 1970s suburban streets, dim porch lights, an unseen figure moving between shadows, let that image fade gently now, and now. Our final, deeply unsettling case, the West Mesa Bone Collector, New Mexico, 2009. On February 2, 2009, a woman walking her dog along the West Mesa of Albuquerque, New Mexico, made a gruesome discovery. Her dog unearthed a human bone. Police excavated the site, and over the following weeks uncovered the skeletal remains of 11 women and 1 unborn child buried in the desert. Most of the victims were young Hispanic women involved in sex work or struggling with addiction. The murders appeared to have occurred between 2001 and 2005. The media dubbed the unknown killer the West Mesa Bone Collector. Authorities quickly assembled a task force. Several suspects were named. Lorenzo Montoya, a local man with a history of violence against women, was considered. Montoya lived less than 3 miles from the burial site and died in a 2006 shootout with the boyfriend of a woman he allegedly killed, but no evidence ever conclusively tied him to the West Mesa murders. Others theorized the killings were the work of a serial offender targeting vulnerable women. Some believed they were connected to human trafficking networks or organized crime. The desolate, scrubby landscape of West Mesa concealed its secrets well. Even today, families of the victims continue to fight for answers. The West Mesa bone collector's identity remains unknown. Picture, for a moment, a stretch of empty desert under a fading sunset, silent but for the wind over dry sand. Secrets buried beneath. As you hold that image, notice your own mind quieting as the quiet hours stretch on and your thoughts begin to drift. We move now to our final passage through the long corridors of America's unsolved history. We've crossed centuries of shadows, from the cruel mystery of the boy in the box to the whispered threats of the Circleville letters and the desolate sands of West Mesa. This final chapter lingers in the uncertain twilight between disappearance and speculation, a story that made headlines across the country and left a community with aching, unanswered questions. The disappearance of Brandon Swanson, Minnesota, 2008. On the evening of May 14, 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson left a gathering of friends in Canby, Minnesota. It was shortly before midnight, and he intended to drive home to Marshall, a town roughly 30 miles away. As he drove along dark, rural roads, Brandon's car veered into a ditch. He wasn't injured, but unable to move the car. He called his parents around 12:30 a.m., asking them to pick him up. What followed was a surreal, frustrating, and ultimately devastating sequence of events. Brandon told his parents he believed he was near the town of Lind. They drove to the location he described while remaining on the phone with him, but they couldn't find him. For over 45 minutes, Brandon and his father, Brian Swanson, spoke on the phone, both trying to see each other's headlights, attempting to bridge the darkness between them. Brandon, increasingly frustrated, finally said he'd leave his car and walk toward lights he could see in the distance. The final words his father heard were, "Oh," the line went silent. Brian tried to call back repeatedly, but the calls went unanswered. They reported Brandon missing by dawn. Search efforts began immediately. Authorities traced his last known call near Taunton, Minnesota, over 20 miles from where he claimed to be. His car was eventually found, abandoned along a gravel road, with no signs of struggle. Extensive ground searches followed, involving hundreds of volunteers, dogs, helicopters, and dive teams. They combed rivers, fields, and farmsteads, yet no trace of Brandon was ever found. One dog team reportedly tracked his scent toward the Yellow Medicine River, but nothing conclusive was recovered. The disappearance stunned the small Minnesota community. How could a teenager, in constant contact with his parents, vanish in plain sight on familiar roads? Some theorized he fell into the river and drowned, his body swept away. Others suspected foul play. In 2009, Brandon's law was passed in Minnesota, requiring immediate investigation for reports of missing adults under suspicious or dangerous circumstances. Regardless of age, Brandon's case remains open. Picture, for a moment, quiet Midwestern plains beneath a starless sky, the distant hum of wind through empty fields, a solitary car, headlights off, and the sharp, final snap of silence on a cell phone line. And as that image fades, your breath grows slower. We now close our long, quiet journey with a handful of shorter, peculiar cases, mysteries that, though lesser known, left a lasting chill in American crime history. The Sodder children disappearance, West Virginia, 1945. On Christmas Eve, 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, a fire consumed the home of George and Jenny Sodder. The couple and 9 of their 10 children were inside when the fire began. George and Jenny, along with 4 of their children, escaped. The remaining 5, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, aged 5 to 14, were presumed to have perished in the blaze. Yet no remains were ever found in the ashes. In the days that followed, bizarre details emerged. The family's telephone line had been cut before the fire. The ladder normally kept by the house was missing. Strangers had reportedly watched the children in town days before. A witness claimed to have seen the children peering from a car as the fire raged. The Sodders believed their children had been abducted. For years they pursued every lead, hiring private investigators, offering rewards, and placing a billboard along Route 16 with photographs of the missing children. In 1968, George and Jenny received an anonymous photograph in the mail, purportedly showing an adult Louis Sodder. The letter bore no return address. The photo remains one of the case's enduring mysteries. George died in 1969. Jenny in 1989. Their surviving family continues to seek answers. Imagine, if you will, a snow-dusted Christmas Eve, flames rising against a starry sky, and a family forever fractured. Now, another eerie episode, one lesser known yet chilling, the death of Blair Adams, Tennessee, 1996. In July 1996, Blair Adams, a 31-year-old Canadian construction worker, embarked on a frantic, irrational journey across North America. Friends and family noted he appeared paranoid, claiming someone was trying to kill him. He withdrew thousands in cash and valuables from his bank, abruptly quit his job, and attempted to enter the United States, but was denied due to his erratic behavior and possession of large amounts of cash. 2 days later, he successfully crossed into the U.S. and began a bewildering multi-state odyssey, traveling from Seattle to Knoxville, Tennessee. On July 11, Adams was found dead in a parking lot of a Knoxville hotel construction site. His body showed signs of a violent beating and possible sexual assault. Scattered around him were his cash, gold, jewelry, and keys to multiple vehicles. Strangely, his clothing was removed in a manner suggesting someone else undressed him. Despite the evidence, no suspect was ever identified. Why Blair Adams fled his home, who he believed was pursuing him, and how he met his end remain unknown. Picture, if you can, a lone figure pacing a darkened parking lot, heart pounding, pursued by shadows only he could see. And finally, a case still haunting police files today, the Setagaya family murders, Japan, 2000. Although a Japanese case, it captivated American true crime audiences. Included here for its eerie familiarity, on December 30, 2000, the Miyazawa family, Mikio, Yasuko, and their children Nina and Rei, were murdered in their home in Setagaya, Tokyo. The killer remained inside the home for hours after, eating ice cream, using the family's computer, and leaving his waste in the toilet. Police recovered extensive DNA and fingerprints. Despite more than 12,000 pieces of evidence, no suspect was identified. In the years since, the crime became a grim legend. Not only in Japan but across international crime communities. What made it especially haunting was the eerie familiarity to cases in American suburbs, families slain in the safety of their own homes by unseen hands, a reminder that mystery knows no border. As you imagine the silent suburban streets of Setagaya, the sound of distant traffic, and a dark house where evil lingered too long, let your thoughts begin to soften. Closing reflections. Throughout this long, gentle journey, we've wandered the foggy byways of America's darkest mysteries, from the unidentified child found in a box in Philadelphia, to the missing voices of the Springfield Three, to the tragic ends of the Yuba County Five, and the ceaseless, silent question marks scattered across the deserts, forests, and cities of a country built on stories, some told, some forever hidden. each case we've explored tonight holds its own ghost. Some still echo through faded police files, others have faded into legend, and though curiosity may tug at you, urging your mind to unravel them. For now, you needn't chase those answers, let the stories settle in the corners of your thoughts. Like mist curling at the edges of sleep, the soft music you hear behind my voice continues to cradle you, the steady rise and fall of your breath. Like the quiet tides of night, soon your dreams may carry you further. Or you may linger in this weightless place between waking and sleep. You've given these mysteries their hour, now it's time to rest. I'll leave you here, in the hush of unanswered questions, under a sky forever carrying secrets. Good night.